So someone who has their heart in heaven, so to speak, it says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So you want to place your treasure in heaven. What is your treasure? Your treasure is what you give value to. And the most important thing that you can give value to in this life is the relationships that you have with people and with God. That's essentially how I see it. And also, I would say sanctification of your own soul as well. You want to be continually working towards conforming more and more to the image of God. Welcome to the Masculine Spirit Podcast, where we discuss masculine development, spirituality, and potential from a Christian perspective. I'm Robert Krause, and I'm joined by my co-host Noah Bills, as always. Today, we're going to be continuing the Virtues and Vices series. I'm glad you guys have been enjoying this series so far. I hope that you've been getting some edifying little pieces of wisdom, some truth that you can apply to your life. Today, we're going to be discussing the power of gratitude and the consequences of greed. Gratitude versus greed. Gratitude is something that even from a non-Christian perspective, I think you see a lot of secular scholars even recognizing the value of gratitude, which is interesting to me.
I think there's definitely, there's just so much to benefit from it that it's just kind of universal, that it's more of an optimistic mindset. And I think people who recognize the benefits of optimism will always be proponents of it. And I think you can reap a lot of good reward from it.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't know the exact statistics, but I've heard some statistics related to health effects of gratitude, whether it's practicing a gratitude journal or just the practice of prayer and thanking God in prayer. I know there's been studies on these things and they have some sort of health benefit. I don't know the exact metric of that and the different factors, but it's a legit
It's
thing.
a mental health benefit for sure. I think just practicing the idea that you look for the good things in your life and you become thankful for those and you focus on the positives definitely has a very large impact on your mental health. So I could see how statistics would back that up, whether you do the journal or the prayer or however you practice grace and gratitude. There's definitely good things to come from it.
And greed is obviously something that we see a ton of in not only modern society, but society overall. It's a human,
it's crazy.
It's a natural human desire to acquire things, whether it's money, power, fame, influence, it's natural. And because it's natural, it's something that we need to be wary of because it can catch us off guard.
All human desires befall us all.
They do befall us all, my brother in Christ.
It's interesting because, obviously greed is it's been very thematic, I think, through human history. It is definitely something that I think everybody to an extent has, greed. I think it makes sense because obviously we all want things, but there are different reasons for why we want these things, whether it's, whatever you listed off earlier. I think ultimately it's just the intention behind it is really what makes it, between just wanting necessary resources or just wanting to be greedy and just wanting to have more for the sake of having more.
Sure, it's the difference between selfish motivation and motivations that are related to other things or trying to benefit other things. It's okay to want to make more money for your family, to give yourself some mobility in the financial system. That's okay, but there's definitely a line you can cross. You want to know where that line is before you cross it.
Yep. there are multiple lines that can be crossed, however you attain these things, what it takes to hold on to those things, and what, hear a lot is it's painful holding on to these things that ultimately just hold us down or keep us isolated. And I think greed for wealth and stuff like that is an example of that. Like, it kind of isolates you. You start prioritizing the money over other things in life and other people. And ultimately, that's a lot more damaging than lots of other stuff that could go down.
Yeah. So James 1:17 says, "Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." Yeah, everything good comes from God. That's a
100%.
central kind of revelation of Christianity. But I think it's, it can kind of appear to be something that you can take for granted or not really think too deeply about. But when you look at it, when you think about it a little more deeply, it can be kind of hard for humans to accept. Like, literally anything good in your life comes from God.
For sure. I mean, there's like it's an interesting thing to kind of reconcile with, because like you said, it's kind of difficult for us to understand exactly that, because we see a lot of things that we make ourselves or other people make, and we like to think that, like, oh, I did this and it's solely mine. But I think ultimately, that this is talked about before in terms of like humility. It's kind of like something that everything you do, you kind of bring up to God, and that's where you can see the best in things. And ultimately, He created everything in the first place. It all just kind of stems from that. Like, anything that's good in this world started because God made it so.
Sure, there's nothing that we work for ourselves or that we earn ourselves. Everything can be traced back to God. And we have this culture today. Well, it's a culture that's been around for a long time, where it's like, go out, earn your money, like, become the best person you can be. Like, this is yours. It's there for the taking, and go get it. Which, in one sense, I do want to encourage that in people and in myself, because I want people to be ambitious. I want them to achieve things that other people haven't achieved before. But it's about the attitude that you go into it with, and who you're giving the credit to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, you should definitely be proud of like the good things that you've done and of other people's good work as well. But it's just like having the knowledge and the understanding that all those good things are rooted in Christ, I think is really important. It gives us a better understanding of who God is and what He represents. And we just try to emulate that as best we can.
Sure. And you don't want to downplay your achievements. You don't want to be the type of person where, for example, you're successful in your career, you have a family, like you're making a good amount of money, and then you just constantly belittle yourself, and you're like, I'm nothing. I haven't gained any of this on my own. Like, it's all of it was God. Like, it is all God, but like, you don't have to belittle yourself and constantly berate yourself in that sense. You just want to have a sober-minded view of things, and like, continually show gratitude to God for the things that He's given you.
Yeah, exactly. You do good work on your own end for sure. It does spur into good things. It's just the trace back is important.
Yeah, because humans can do good things. Humans do good things all the time.
I'd like to think so, yeah.
Yes. But it is in the framework which God has already established that those things are even possible. Another verse I wanted to discuss is Matthew 6:19-21. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also."
I feel like there's a few good things to unpack in this verse. We're talking about how you don't want to just focus on the accumulation of like earthly treasures, so to speak. Because like it says, moth and rust destroy these things, thieves break in and steal. I think it's ultimately just telling you that the best treasures are not the things that you accumulate in material. That ultimately, like, the best things you could have are good deeds and good relationships and a good heart.
I agree. Yeah, you don't want to be the type of person that is focused primarily on materialistic things, because materialistic things fade. And as Christians, we believe in souls. We believe in eternity and the fact that the actions that we take to foster our relationships with others and with God are eternal. The reward of cultivating those things is huge, and the consequences of not cultivating those things are also very detrimental as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, ultimately, the earthly treasures, I mean, in my eyes, they just like, they pale in comparison to the other things you could have in life here on earth, and both life in heaven. I mean, not only on top of the fact that like those resources fade or can be taken or can be destroyed, but it's just like, if you really think about what's important in your life, like it should just be the people around you and your relationships and your relationship with Christ, striving for goodness in your own heart and advocating for the goodness in others. And no amount of money is going to do anything about that. Obviously, money and all those things are good to have to maintain our societal standing, having good health and backup resources to make sure you don't go hungry and you're always housed. In the end, those things fade. Food gets eaten, houses get destroyed and blown down or just deteriorate over time. It's not timeless, but everything else that you could value is timeless.
Yeah, and I think one of the dynamics that people can fall into in this kind of discussion, something that I've fallen into before, is when you don't have something, say like a financial status, certain amount of money, certain car, all these like materialistic things, when you don't have it, that's when you want it the most. And it can be easy to kind of orient your life towards those things when you don't have it. But most people who are able to achieve those higher, materialistic goals that people have will tell you that when they actually achieve those things, they don't want it nearly as much. It doesn't really mean anything to them at that point. Like, it's just on to the next thing. Whereas with relationships, when you're building relationships continually over a period of time, it's just a gift that keeps on giving. Like, you grow stronger with the people that you build those relationships with. You can rely on them, they can rely on you. It's much more rewarding, and it lasts forever, is my belief.
I completely agree. The connections you make are just a lot more valuable in the end. Greed does not serve you in the same ways. I would much rather be materialistically poor and spiritually rich than the other way around. And that just kind of leads into the whole gratitude thing as well. You could be the poorest person on earth, but if you have gratitude and joy in your heart, you could be happier than most billionaires, millionaires, whoever. And I think ultimately that's what matters more.
And vice versa, you could be the richest person on earth, which a lot of people may judge you for, but you could still be gracious and generous and be, donating a lot of your money, helping people in every way that you can. So it's not some kind of war between the rich and the poor, nothing like that. It's just about orienting your mind in the right place.
Yeah, I think if you do find yourself having a large accumulation of wealth, I think it's really good to evaluate what you really need out of it, what you need for your life and for the lives of the people you care about, but then strive to make use of that wealth in other ways. If you find yourself just keep wanting to make more and more money, it's an interesting way to go. I don't recommend it. I feel like you're going to eventually get to the point where you're stepping on other people's toes just to bring yourself up. And again, that's where the reevaluation comes into play. You really need to look at what you have and what you can offer people. And I think in the end, you want to do the best that you can for the other people in your life rather than for yourself. Be gracious for what you have and have a lot of gratitude, and do what you can for other people if your own bucket is filled.
And also, the money that you donate, you can deduct from your taxes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You gotta learn the tax game, learn how to deduct stuff.
Yep, just to give you a little financial tip there, if you happen to be balling and donating more than the standard deduction, you can do
I
that.
understand exactly what that means. I know taxes. We're actually here giving financial advice on top of spiritual Christian advice.
Oh man, I do not want to
Finance
label myself as a finance
bros,
influencer.
finance influencers. All right, Robbie, what do you think it means for someone to have their heart in heaven versus having their heart on earth?
So someone who has their heart in heaven, so to speak, as this verse is speaking about. It says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So you want to place your treasure in heaven. What is your treasure? Your treasure is what you give value to. And like you and I were talking about, the most important thing that you can give value to in this life is the relationships that you have with people and with God. That's essentially how I see it. And also, I would say sanctification of your own soul as well. You want to be continually working towards conforming more and more to the image of God. I would say that is a treasure as well. Whereas somebody who has their heart on earth, this would be someone who places their value in materialistic things, status, finances, anything that people place value in that eventually withers away and dies. Your heart's on earth, so you're placing your sense of value in a place inherently that is finite, will eventually wither and perish and be no more. So why would you place your heart there?
Bad news, man. It's a bad place for the heart to be. It's where the heart decays as well.
I think you should place your heart inside of a little chest with a key.
Yes.
And bury it under some sand, and then hide the key in a separate location so that,
Yes.
Maybe pirates have to discover a plan or a hidden map to kind of get to the key, and then try to find your heart and kill it.
Yeah, make an adventure out of it. Make it interesting so people want to find your heart and then kill it. It makes it like a fun little game. And eventually the heart gets transferred into a jar of sand.
And eventually you grow a tentacle beard.
Yes. That's what you should strive for. The tentacle beard is not materialistic. That's actually set in heaven. Scriptural.
If there's anything you can take from this podcast is that it's that Davy Jones is a prime masculine role model.
Prime Christian masculine role model.
Oh, I love those movies though.
So I agree. All right, back to the thing. Let's go to this next verse. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 24. One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want.
It's kind of a inverse relationship there. A little unexpected.
Exactly. I feel like this verse is pretty plain. I think we all understand kind of what it's talking about, and I feel like it's pretty easily seen. It's the idea that those who give more to other people in their life, or just even to strangers, those are the people that are richest at heart and tend to be the happiest and the most content with what they have. Versus the other side, which we see a lot, is those who withhold, those who try to hoard more and more, just end up doing the same thing. It's a lack of satisfaction that they have from money that drives them to get even more than what they had before. And that's very telling, if you ask me. The fact that people who have so much that they feel like they don't have enough, yet they have infinitely more than other people, should tell you how empty money and other materialistic items can be.
I think part of that is because it's never ending. And if you are someone who does place your value in those materialistic things, there's always someone that is doing better than you. Oh, I made $1 million. Well, somebody has 10 million.
Loser.
I sold a business for $20 million. That's freaking amazing. Well, somebody's a billionaire. It never ends. But which is why it is, or it's part of why it's completely foolish to place your worth in these things.
You're never going to stop. You're never going to find what you want.
and never be satisfied.
Never be satisfied. That sounds lame. Imagine not being satisfied.
I'd be satisfied on the daily, brother. No, but something else this verse kind of highlights to me is that somebody who gives, that means that they're rich in spirit. But I also think that there's this other kind of dynamic that happens where when you're financially blessed and you choose to give, or even if you're not financially blessed and you just choose to be generous, the type of person that is going to choose to be generous no matter what is the type of person that other people want to work with. It's the type of person that interviewers want to hire. It's the type of person that maybe an investor would consider investing in a business that you're starting. So you have these characteristics, generosity being one of them, that tend to attract things that are financially advantageous, if that makes sense.
I will say on the flip side, though, that some people might not value generosity in you because they themselves are greedy. And if they were to trust you with some of their own finances, they would want you to be greedy like them because that would earn them the most money. But those people are not the ones you want to be doing business with in a metaphorical and in a literal sense. You want to show your grace and gratitude, and that'll attract other gracious people and generous people. And that's who you want to surround yourself with.
Yeah, it's kind of a self-correcting mechanism, because the more that you become like the people you want to attract, the more you're going to attract them, and the more you will unconsciously repel the other kinds of people that you don't want to do business with or you don't want to work with.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So be the type of person. Yeah, be the type of person that you would want to work with, the type of person that you would trust.
Exactly.
For you, Noah, what are some of the barriers to generosity that you faced in your life, and what have you done to kind of overcome those things?
Oh, I've never had a barrier in my life. Everything's actually been really easy for me.
Well,
Well,
I knew
straight
that
white Christian male in American society, I've never had a barrier at
exactly. As
all.
soon as I saw that you were a Christian, white, straight male, obviously your life was there were no issues.
Barrierless.
Yeah.
Doors open everywhere.
Yeah.
Generosity. Can you define that a little bit more? Are you talking about like things that have barred me from being generous, or things that have not gone my way due to my generosity?
I'm thinking more like psychological or like relational issues that you've had to work with, or work through, where they might make you hesitant to be generous, those kind of things.
I think like the main thing is, if you're referring to people, there's ultimately people that just are not worth your generosity. And what I mean by that is there are types of people that are always willing to take from you, but will very rarely give back. And that's a good thing to kind of recognize in all your relationships. Is generosity is obviously a really good thing to have, and you want to be generous with the people who you care about, you love in your life. But if there are people who only act to take from you, that's just ultimately not healthy for you. Even though generosity by itself is a good thing, there's a point where you can't give away everything you have. Like, you need to keep things for yourself or keep things for other people who are more worth that time and are willing to graciously accept what you have and be able to give back. So it's also just a mindset you don't want to feed. You don't want to feed into people who only take, because then that just teaches them that taking's good. That's all they need to do is just take from other people. That's not healthy. It's good for both parties to recognize that there is an unequal exchange and something needs to change.
Yeah, there's a balance between enabling someone to continue, asking for handouts and living off of those, and then being the type of person who never wants to trust anyone with their money in a generous way. Because, you do have people that will take advantage of people who are generous. This is just a thing that happens in the world. But I think when you choose to be a generous person with your finances, you have to kind of accept that to some degree. Like it'll happen to some degree if you choose to give away money. But in a situation where you know that you're enabling someone to continue something that's unhealthy for them, you really don't want to do that, because that's not good for you or for them. But on the other side, you don't want to be the type of person who just judges other people and decides that they're not going to be generous at all.
Only God can judge.
God can judge. Yeah.
I mean, we can judge too, but it's not the greatest thing to make judgments.
It's very difficult to make judgments as a human without being hypocritical.
Biased.
Or biased. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we all have judgmental thoughts, but you don't want to act or dwell in those things.
And then another temptation that we can have is to give and expect something in return, which the Bible heavily warns us against that.
For sure.
You should be giving from the kindness of your heart, from the overflow of things that God has given you,
Exactly.
without expecting anything in return. You wish the best for the person and leave it at that.
Exactly. But then that just goes back to the other thing, that definitely give out of the kindness of your heart and not expect anything back, but also just, depending on the attitude of the other person, it's okay to withhold if, again, it's enabling bad habits in either one of the parties.
Sure, you have to be logical about it. Let's say you're a multi-billionaire and there's a homeless guy that you randomly decide to buy a house for him, just out of the kindness of your heart. You saw him on the street. You're like, oh, sure, I'll do this. I know this isn't a relatable situation, but it's the one that I'm going with. It is for me,
but...
So you decide to buy him a house. Couple weeks into it, house is trashed. It's burned down, like something. He just didn't take care of it at all. The next time he asks you for something, are you really going to be obligated to buy him another house? No, you can use your judgment. You can use your discernment to make logical decisions. Yeah.
That's why it's better to I feel like in those circumstances where if you want to give, you really have to evaluate what can you give that person that's going to aid them beneficially, and what is something that they can handle. Giving a whole freaking house to a person is a lot of responsibility. I mean, it's a great gift, but not everybody can accept the responsibility of something like that. So that's where sometimes even doing smaller gestures, small gestures can go a long way. I feel like there's just some people that have gone so long without anybody doing any form of kindness for them that small things can make a really big impact, mentally. Just buying a meal for somebody, it's going to benefit them for that day and does good things, as opposed to giving them money where maybe they'll just go to the nearest 7-Eleven and buy a pack of cigarettes, which isn't great for them. Food is always a good choice. You evaluate the situation, you know what they need, and give them what they can handle.
Yeah, I know that for me, anytime I bought food for somebody who was asking for money or food, whatever they're asking for, they've always been so grateful. You may not think that you buying somebody a cheeseburger is going to make that much of an impact on them, but imagine being the person sitting there seeing cars drive by all day. You maybe get one or two people to get you something. It means quite a bit to them.
For sure. I mean, if you buy me a cheeseburger, I'll do anything you want. So
say less.
I'm that cheap.
Wow, dude. It's a crazy generation we live in. These kids have no self-control. All right, this verse is from 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 10. Godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Very famous verse.
Indeed, money is the root of all evil. If you own even a single penny, you are an evil, terrible person for having money.
No, but that highlights common misinterpretation of this verse. A lot of people will quote it as money is the root of all evil. But that's not what it says. It says the love of money is the root of all evil, or all kinds of evil, depending on your translation.
Bold of you to disagree with my statement about the penny, but go on.
Okay. I'm a bold guy.
Yeah, I guess so.
What can I say? Yeah, so...
But no, yeah, it makes sense.
There's this distinguishing between the love of money and money itself. Prioritizing, the way that I kind of view the love of money is like placing a very high priority on it in your life. If it's taking priority over things that should be much more important, that constitutes love. If you're going against your morals, if you are going against what God has spoken in order to get financial gain, then there will be a price to pay, and it's going to be worse than a monetary price.
The accumulation of pretty much like any material good is kind of synonymous with money, seeing how money and material goods are interchangeable. But it just goes back to the idea of like, see all these people that are just constantly going after more and more money. They'll achieve like, you know, the 6-figure status to the 7-figure status, maybe to the 8-figure status. But it's like, where does it end? Why do they keep going for these things? Like, you know, that person and their families are very well taken care of at that point. You have to really understand exactly why are we going for more money? Maybe you want the money so you can do research into, you know, like cancer treatments or something. That's cool. Or maybe you just want money to donate to all these other causes. And I think that's very honorable. Money for the sake of money or for the sake of other material goods ultimately leaves you wanting. And I think money can serve such a much more impactful purpose than just having more of these things. Again, with like the donation or like the funding of things that benefit humankind. But again, obviously money is a good thing to have, and I strive to have money. I want good money, but I believe my intentions for it are for my own health and safety and the health and safety of my loved ones. And for now, my desire for money stops there, and I hope it stays like that. If it ever evolves into something else, Robbie has vowed to shoot me in the back of the head and write a suicide note for me.
I think it would be a lot cooler if I stabbed you with a katana.
No, we're not discussing this again.
You don't want
I'm
that?
not doing the katana. No, we already agreed on the shot to the back of the head. I'm not doing this again, Robbie.
But yeah. Noah, I want to see the life leave your eyes.
That sounds like a material good that you need to reevaluate if it's worth it or not.
Fair point. I think with this love of money discussion, I think there's some changes that have happened in the modern world where money is increasingly becoming even more important in some ways. It's always been important throughout history, but nowadays we use it for everything. You know, we have credit cards that we're tapping on stuff all day, you know, just, oh yeah, give me that. But it's like, we have to. Because there's so many services, so many businesses in the modern world, our lives are changing and becoming more expensive. And then
you need money.
And it's scary, like being a normal person, just working a regular job. You're worried about inflation. You're worried about what the government is going to do to potentially destabilize currency. You have the stock market that is volatile at times.
If you know anything about the stock market, yes. Yep.
Well, it's still volatile whether or not you know about it, but
I don't know anything about the stock market, so.
Oh, you will. Once you start your engineering jobs, you will. It's okay.
Okay, whatever you say.
But no, my point is that in the modern world, money has become much more complex, and because of that, it can be difficult to know exactly how to apply this verse. Like, is it wrong to save for retirement and have, you know, these hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions of dollars that are compounding? Is that wrong? That's a discussion we can have. But, you know, it's different. It's not like how it used to be where most people were farmers. They owned a farm. they maybe bartered some stuff for like livestock or crops and stuff. It's much more complex. So
That's
what's
100% true.
what do you kind of think about how we can apply these principles in the modern day?
What do you mean, like making comparisons between the old bartering and building everything for your own system to the modern day?
Yeah, just all these complex systems, like how should a Christian participate in these complex monetary systems, if at all?
I mean, at this point, like you said earlier, like it's kind of there's no way to get around using money and acquiring it, saving it, all that fun stuff. Because like you were drawing on from before, back in the day, you would potentially just have your own farm, make your own food, probably build your own house, and then like you said, you would just trade things for like other livestock or tools or whatever random services you needed. But life was a little simpler back then. It was easier to get away with such things. These days, there's so much going on. There's so many things that the law requires you to have. There's so many things that society requires you to have. Like these days, you need a car. Like 99% of the time, to have a job and to do anything, you need a car. You need to be mobile. Because that means you need to have money to buy a car. That means you need to have money to have insurance for the car legally, because you need the insurance for the car. You need to be able to pay the government for registration. Obviously, you need money for all these things. Money's not going away. There is a certain love for money that makes sense because we need it to live. And, it's associated with the love for life and all the wonderful things that we can enjoy. But once you make it past those things, once the car is all paid off, the house is all paid off, your food's all stocked, your family's all set with health insurance, blah, blah, blah. And now you just have millions sitting away that has nothing to do with the future or any plans. You just have it for the sake of having it. That's when you need to really reevaluate why it's there, what its purpose is. Are you doing this because you just love money? Or are you doing this because you're fearful of something happening to you and you need that money? Do you have grand plans for it? Are you plan on donating it to some wildlife services to start up some nature conservatories or whatever? Money is a tool, so it all is rooted in what you intend to do with that tool and how you do it.
Like obviously we're going to have money. We have to have money to be a functional person in this society, especially in the U.S. Of course, we're speaking from experience in the U.S. Maybe in other parts of the world, it can be a little bit different, but it's more of a question of like, how do you manage your money once you get it? I think obviously
100%.
the Bible encourages us to be generous. So that should be one of our first concerns, is to be generous with our money, be giving some money to the church. If you're a Christian, I would encourage you to be giving a little bit of money to the church as well. But yeah, when it comes to investment, trying to grow your money, maybe like getting into real estate, you have all these different things. Crypto, dude, or crypto bros.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
actually cryptocurrency bros on top of finance bros. We have a podcast episode coming up about Dogecoin.
Dude, Bitcoin's going to 12 million by the end of 2025.
We're also going to make our own cryptocurrency that you should invest in. It's called masculine spirit coins.
You should really consider it. It's probably going to be even more stable than Bitcoin.
Infinitely more stable. You should listen to us. It's going to be the most stable. It's going to give you the most growth, the most Roth, the most IRA.
No, but you have all these different investment vehicles, things to grow your wealth. It's like, for me, the boundary with that is like, you don't want to do something that is super risky because you don't want to be,
Don't want to gamble.
You don't want to gamble. You don't want to discount the things that God has given you. You don't want to take them for granted or treat them like they are not valuable.
Don't be frivolous with the things you are given.
Exactly. So yeah, don't be risky, and then be generous, and be generous in the proportion to how much you are blessed. If you're making more, you should be giving more. If you're making a little bit less, it's okay to give less, but you should still be giving. That kind of thing. Yeah, it's tough out here. It's tough in this modern world to make a living, feel like your family is taken care of, and be set up for retirement. And maybe be thinking about like, generational wealth type stuff if you want to leave money for your kids. There's a lots of things to think about.
Yeah, especially since like there's the line between having enough and being greedy is very blurred and grayed. I think it is really difficult to tell when somebody's being greedy and when they're being smart and advantageous and generous with what they have. I think it's really something you have to evaluate for yourself in modern society because it's difficult to just see at a glance.
Yeah, and it's not like you have these people that are put into these boxes of greedy and generous. We are all greedy at different times, and we are all generous at different times. It's there's a lot of gray area. Like I'll find myself, one day I'll be happily helping somebody out by giving them some money or whatever, or happily donating to, or not donating, tithing. But then
Yeah, you wouldn't donate.
No, but then the next month comes up and it's time for me to tithe, and for some reason this month I'm like, I don't really feel like doing it this time. Like I would rather use that money for something else. And I still do it, but we have these conflicting desires within us that are always at play, going back and forth.
It's almost like we are human and prone to sin. Except for me, I'm sinless.
So we all have these conflicting desires. We just need to know how to respond when those greedy, selfish desires tend to come up. You have to be ready. So Luke 12:15 says, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." That's actually what we were just talking about. I wasn't even trying to make a little segue. It just happened.
Yeah, we can just skip this verse then. We can just move on.
No, but yeah,
I'm
be
kidding.
on guard against all covetousness. You don't want to be obsessing over these things. And covetousness can be not just over money, but over a partner that you are interested in. It can be over other things like cars, house, even over...
It can be both material and non-material, really.
Yeah, it could be even some kind of relationship. Like maybe, let's say you grew up without a dad and you see someone who has a great relationship with their father. It's possible to covet that. Like it's possible to covet all kinds of things.
For sure. It's more of just like about what you value rather than just objects with monetary value. Which, I mean, obviously it's good to value things and to value the good things. And maybe understand that there are things that other people have that are good that you don't, but it's nothing that you should be lusting after in a sense.
Makes you resentful as well.
Yeah. It's where gratitude comes into play. You just have to be gracious, have gratitude for the things that you already have and the things that you can obtain. If you don't have a dad, make a dad.
Hey, soon with AI, we'll have dads on demand. Daddies on demand. Let's go.
Let's market that. Daddy demand.
I like the sound to it. It's a good name. Yeah, and the portion of the verse that says one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. It's kind of getting back to the status thing. Your worth as a human, your value to the people that you know, and your value before God is not dependent on materialistic things. God gives us all dignity as humans. He's made us all in his image, and we're all of equal value. So, you want to do your best to be the best person you can for those around you, but you don't want to be judging yourself, comparing yourself to others. This gets into something else that is quite interesting to me. Comparing yourself to others. Like sometimes we'll compare ourselves to people that we see. The classic example is you're driving around, maybe you have a Honda Civic or whatever. Guy pulls up in a Ferrari next to you. You're like, wow, I wish I was that guy. Oh, maybe he has a hot chick next to him. Classic. He's smoking a cigar. The whole whole thing, whole image.
He's got sunglasses on. He's got the sunroof down. He gives you a look up and down, chuckles at you, drives off super fast. And you're like, dang it.
You know, you're over there just salivating, just waiting for the opportunity
Drooling.
to be that man. But little did you know, his marriage is falling apart. This is a prostitute that he picked up. He has a crippling cocaine addiction. His business that actually allowed him to buy this Ferrari is actually failing, and he's going to be underwater pretty soon. It's like, you know, this is an extreme story to get across a point, which is you don't know what's going on in people's lives, and you could be jealous of someone and want to be someone that you actually don't want to be at all.
I mean, ultimately, you're just building up an image in your head of what you would like it to be and then wishing for that. But it's never that simple. And really, you shouldn't be envious of others. You should just really compare yourself to only one other person, in a literal sense, and that's yourself. You just want to have more than what you had a day ago, a month ago, a year ago. Well, this can apply to like anything, not even just money, because obviously financial situations go up and down, but maybe you have a lot more knowledge of whatever, a lot more skill than you did a year ago. No, it's not just about money.
Yeah, it can be anything. There's a plethora of things for us to be jealous of in other people. So since we covered the fact that financial status in no way is correlated with like the value of a person, to you, what does financial status actually indicate in a person?
That they have money. Honestly, like, I feel like it's kind of simple. I think financial status really, the only real thing that you can indicate from that is that they have money, but you don't know anything else that's going on. You don't even know if that's money long lasting. That could be money in the moment. They could be losing it all in a month and you wouldn't even know. Like you were saying before with the guy in the Ferrari with the cigar, the sunglasses, the convertible, and the business, and the wife, and the failing, the prostitute, and the business that's failing. You know, that whole example.
I really like that example. It's a fun one.
Classic. I think it really just indicates that person just has money in the moment. I think it doesn't mean that they have longevity. It doesn't mean that they have anything else. I think it's purely, if you're looking at just at a surface level and that's all you know, then that's all that it tells you.
So yeah, you know, you can have this kind of thing where you look and you just see the external wealth that somebody shows, but you don't know what's going on in the background. But just for the sake of discussion, let's say that you have these two different scenarios. This is scenario one. So scenario one, you have a husband and a wife who are business owners. They're making a bunch of money. They're managing their money well. Their family's good. Everything's good. There's no issues. They're not doing anything stupid. Then scenario two, you have a husband and a wife who are barely scraping by. You know, maybe they're able to provide for their kids, but living paycheck to paycheck, not able to save very much. But, you know, everything's good, like nothing's falling apart. In those situations, do you think that, is there anything that financial status indicates about a person? It's kind of a hard question, but like, what would you say?
Honestly, I just go back to my original answer. The only difference there is just how much money they have in the moment. Sounds like everything's still good on both ends, theoretically. Maybe they're just not super, the other family's just not as good with money, or maybe they just are in a position where they can't make as much money. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, as long as they have their basic provisions taken care of and they're happy, healthy, God-fearing Christians, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say a similar answer. It's like, you know, it mainly indicates to me that there's just like a difference in financial literacy, maybe just like knowledge about money and how to manage money. There's also the fact that, you know, maybe the family who's making less money just doesn't want to make more money, or they don't want to do jobs that would happen to make more money.
I mean, there's people all the time that are really invested in professions that do not make a lot of money. In my personal experience, I mean, my parents both are really invested in professions that do not make a lot of money. My dad being a pastor of a kind of smaller church does not really earn him a lot, but it is his passion and his calling. and he does it and he's happy. And my mother teaches kids, and that's something she's really happy doing as well. But neither one of them give a lot of money. It really just it depends on what position you put yourself into, because there are lots of stories of people who get into these professions knowing that it's not going to give them a lot of money and knowing that it's going to make things financially more difficult for them, but it's sacrifices that they're willing to make because they wholeheartedly believe in the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and that's amazing, because we need people who really want to be amazing pastors. We need people who really want to be like the best teacher they can be. These are roles that we need in society that unfortunately, we don't compensate very well, but we need people that are willing to do those things. And so, yeah, that's awesome.
I agree. Philippians chapter 4, verses 6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Imagine not having anxiety ever. That sounds awesome.
It's crazy what the Bible calls us to sometimes. Do not be anxious about anything.
So that's a difficult one for sure for me, but
that's a difficult one for everyone. Unless you're popping Xannies all day.
That ain't me.
I praise God for that. So yeah, I've always liked this verse. This has been a verse that I remember learning in Sunday school. They would have us memorize this verse and recite it, which I think is great, because this is something that we need to be reminded of all the time. Life will always present us with new things that induce anxiety. And it's almost like whenever you get to a new level, whenever you get to that next step in life, there are these new tests that come at you, these new challenges. So this is a verse that I think we all need to be repeating to ourselves, because as Christians, we have access to the peace of God when we choose to cast our anxieties upon Him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it helps tie back into the whole idea of kind of gratitude and optimistic thinking. Like, you don't want to worry yourself with things you don't have control over. You just take what you have, use what you can, do what you will to make improvements in your life and in the lives of others. And anything you don't have control over, you just leave up to God, and you know that He's going to do the best for you, whether it's challenging you more and allowing you to grow from it, or giving you what you need to accomplish the next feat that you need to accomplish. Anxiety does not serve you at all. I don't think anybody has really benefited more from having anxiety than they have suffered from it.
Sure, there's people that are able to kind of alchemize their anxiety into energy that propels them forward. Would I say that that is the healthiest way to move yourself forward? No, but people do it. And I would say that it's better, if you're in a situation where you can't get rid of your anxiety, it's better to do that. It's better to use it as fuel than to shut down.
For sure. I agree. Ultimately, if there are things that you can do about something, you shouldn't really be that anxious in the first place. If it's something you definitely know you can do, then the anxiety is kind of negligible. But if you do have that type of anxiety that just persists regardless and shuts you down, then that's obviously really detrimental. If it is something that can bring you forward, that's cool. I still go back to my earlier statement where I think that in the end, the anxiety that you feel, whether it propels you forward or not, is still more detrimental in the long run than just not having it and being able to do those things yourself.
Yeah, and I think, don't quote me on this, but I've heard this said that it's impossible for the brain to experience anxiety and gratitude at the same time.
Interesting.
In the same moment. So yeah, like, it's interesting.
What's the science behind that?
I don't know. Hey, I said, don't quote me. Don't quote me. But it's a good thought.
Can I get some fact-checked articles about that statement?
It's interesting because on the surface, you wouldn't think that anxiety and gratitude are like these opposite things or are super related. But it's like, I think you can kind of go back and see this experientially in your life. If you think back to a time when you were super thankful, you probably weren't experiencing anxiety at that time. If you think back to a time when you were very anxious, you probably weren't very thankful and grateful for what was happening at that time. So I think looking back in hindsight, you can kind of see that it is true.
For sure. I mean, they are very contradictory emotions, so I could see that.
So be gracious. Remember the things that God has done for you. Remember the ways that He's provided for you, helped you through your difficult times, and He will reward that, and He will give you peace. Well, thank you all for joining us. Please send us your thoughts, suggestions, and criticisms at masculinespiritpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to continuing this journey together, and have a blessed day.
Blessed day.
Finding strength in submission, that's the mission. Breaking chains of tradition, new position. Walking in His vision, divine commission. This is masculine spirit, listen. Started as a boy with a heart full of questions, seeking validation through worldly possessions, learning wrong lessons about masculine expression. Depression hit heavy with painful suggestions that I wasn't worthy, wasn't making impressions, till I found His message and started progressing. Through every blessing and every testing, now I'm addressing the lies I was festering. Stand up, warrior, it's time to rise. Let His light shine through your eyes. Every battle makes you rise. This is where your spirit flies. Yeah, this is where your spirit flies. See, the thing about manhood, it isn't in muscles, though I built them daily through physical struggles, deeper than hustles and temporary puzzles. Spirit was muzzled till Christ came to shuffle my priorities, showing me purpose is foundational, rational, factual, but still inspirational, national, global, yet still congregational, building generational wisdom, that's operation. Finding strength in submission, that's the mission. Breaking chains of tradition, new position. Walking in His vision, divine commission. This is masculine spirit, listen. Biblical principles, giving me clarity. Carrying wisdom through all this disparity. Apparently strength isn't measured in scarcity. Rapid with charity, prayer, sincerity. Finding the warrior spirit inside of me, guided by a light that was hiding inside of me. Pride had to die for this ride to be righteous. See, Christ had to rise for this life to be bright in me. Sometimes we fall. Sometimes we crawl. But through it all, we hear His call. Building walls, standing tall, breaking falls, for our brothers. Yeah. Brothers, we stronger when walking together, whether the weather is stormy or better. We measure our treasure in spiritual leather and never say never to heavenly preference. Learning to lead when we're serving the least of us, freeing the beast while releasing the priest in us, seeking increase while defeating was keeping us, chained to beliefs that are deeply deceiving us. Stand up, warrior, it's time to shine. Let your light lead down the line. Every brother by design. This is where our spirits climb. This is where our spirits stand as a beacon for the brothers still seeking. Show them strength isn't weakness when you're down on your knees. Every trial that tested me, every mile that pressed in me, built the man God blessed in me. Now I'm walking in destiny.